Major Cipla is also planning to move the Delhi High Court to challenge a health ministry notification from last week. Now, the Gazette notification calls for a ban on 344 fixed-dose combination drugs. Now, FDCs are drugs that combine two or more active pharmaceutical ingredients. And the health ministry says that FDCs do not have any therapeutic benefit for consumers, and there are safer drugs already available in the market. However, the Delhi High Court has given interim relief to Pfizer, Abbott, as well as McLeod Pharma, and there are some other drug majors that are in line to seek relief as well. Shireen Ban is now joined by DG Shah, Secretary General of the Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance. Over to you, Shireen.
Well, thanks very much. In fact, as we speak, the Delhi High Court has granted interim relief to P&G, Reckitt, Glenmark, Alembic and Piramal. The Delhi High Court has stayed till the March 10th notification with regards to the 5 pharma companies and directed that no coercive action be taken. And this stay will be operational till the next hearing, which is the 21st of March. So let's bring in DG Shah. Mr. Shah, interim relief at this point in time being given to the pharma companies. But what is the big bone of contention? Because the government's argument is that this was done at the behest of recommendations of an expert committee. The expert committee, in its assessment, has found that there is no therapeutic value to the FDCs that are out in the market, and there are better alternatives that are available.
Shireen, if a dozen companies have gone to court and courts have readily granted an interim stay, what does it speak for the quality of the order and the process followed? Industry has no fun in fighting government and going to court. It's very painful process, but it's so frustrated that in every sphere, the rules are being interpreted or enforced in a manner where burden of compliance is becoming very heavy on the industry. Take this simple example.
But may I interrupt you, Mr. Shah, because there is confusion on the issue on whether a show cause notice was in fact issued, whether companies were called to represent before this expert committee, because there are reports that suggest that show cause notices were issued, representatives were called to come and make presentations, but no one showed up.
This is not true. And the way they were drafted and sent out, it only meant that you are walking into a trap. So if the intentions were visible, that I am being called only to clinch this deal and declare my product as irrational with a closed mind, nobody will walk into that. And this is precisely what happened. And if government did really do that, they can go back to court and produce all the letters and evidence that they were called and the industry did not come, which is not true. And this is not the reason how, this is not the way how government and industry should work together. Industry is not opposed to banning irrational combinations. Question is how and what evidence basis, and whether you listen to the company or not.
All right, so you're saying that due process was not followed by the government, representation or time for representation ought to have been given to industry. But Mr. Shah, let's talk about the case that the government is building, and I want you to respond to that, because is it not a fact that FDCs are currently 45% of the Indian market? Is it not a fact that India's share of FDC drugs is one of the highest in the world? Is it not a fact that some of these combinations are globally banned, globally not available?
Now, let me answer each of these 3 questions. These numbers which you quoted, where did it come from? Because what Ministry of Health did, they referred 6,220 fixed dose combinations to the expert committee. Expert committee found only 15% of that is 963, as irrational combinations. So this 45% is not true. Number 2, internationally, India was the only pharmaceutical market where IPR regime was lax prior to TRIPS agreement. Therefore, in an IPR regime, the product patents which did not exist, combining 2 products made a sense. And you look at this antiretrovirals, the combination which Cipla brought, none of the originators were willing to do that. And that has aided the patients the burden of pill, which was there 27 pills a day, is reduced to 9 pills a day. Now,
Sure.
merely because internationally waste does not have this doesn't mean that India cannot be an innovative country in anti-TB, in antiretroviral, in anti-malaria, number of areas.
No,
India has been pioneer.
you're making a case for where combinations have perhaps been innovative in India, has perhaps been ahead of the curve. But let's also talk about combinations that are banned globally. I mean, nimesulide is a long-standing example, Mr. Shah. We've had this conversation several times in the past as well. You know, other products as well, including the likes of Vicks 500, for instance, face the same fate globally. So would you agree that perhaps a blanket ban is unwarranted, but perhaps there is need to wet this list and industry also needs to introspect?
I'm totally with you, and at the outset I said that we are not against ban. Follow a due process of law, evaluate a product which is, say, pioglitazone, was not the way we banned it 2 years ago and then reopened the ban. What was that had gone behind it? Was it patient interest or it was commercial interest? Issue is industry could be fully supportive. Industry and government has to work hand in hand and look at the patient interest. That's the ultimate. But we are being driven to a point which leaves no opening, and court is the last resort. And we know that the court is not going to decide whether it's rational or irrational. We have to go back to the government and sit down.
Okay, let me ask you this, Mr. Shah, because we're running out of time, but there are several other important questions. We understand that perhaps this is not the end as far as the banning is concerned on part of the government. Maybe these are reports. I'm not sure the veracity of these reports, but the government could consider another 400 drugs being banned as well. Have you heard anything from either the regulator, the government, or this expert committee on future course of action?
Nothing. And I mentioned a short while ago that out of 6,220, the expert committee had identified 963 as irrational. My question is, why, on what basis these 344 were selected first and why remaining are not considered? And for 1 year, the government is sitting on this report. Aren't they responsible for hurting the patient interest? If these combinations were harmful, why for 12 months no action is taken on this report? And suddenly one fine day, you issue a notification that from 2 days ago, the product is banned. Industry has
yes, those are questions of the government. Those are questions the government must answer, but two quick questions to you, Mr. Shah. What is the implication of this ban on the industry? Because I'm looking at the impacted companies. There's a whole bunch of them: Abbott, Pfizer, McLeod's, Mankind, Sun Pharma, Alkem. On the whole, can you give us a broad estimation of the impact of this ban on the industry? And secondly, what will this mean in terms of the impact on the consumer? Are we likely to see prices moving higher?
10,000 crore of turnover will be shaved off in this 1 year. Now, it constitutes 10% of the industry's turnover if all these 963 are banned. And as if this is not enough, the pricing regulator, another regulator, is shaving off a few thousand crore more from the pricing side. Now, an industry which is, even if it grows by 15%, the net growth will be only 5%. Now, we killed the bulk drug industry. The pharma industry has survived so far. But if these policies continue, who is going to invest in pharmaceutical? And for the domestic market, they may invest, do acquisitions outside India and serve the foreign markets. But this instability, knee-jerk reactions, no total lack of transparency, because this 963 which I'm mentioning to you is our sources of information, but nothing has been put in public domain. Why was the Kokate committee report, this expert committee report, which first report came in January 2015, not put on the website? So that I mean, industry wants to cooperate and work with government, not oppose government. But we don't see any
Mr. Shah,
action. I'm sorry.
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Any action on part of the government? My final question to you, Mr. Shah, you're saying that it could be a hit of almost 10,000 crores, if not more, on the back of the order which seeks to ban these 344 drugs, and another couple of thousand crores will be shaved off because of the price control notification. Has there been any effort on the part of, all of you industry bodies to try and reach out to the highest levels of government? Have you made any attempt to reach out to the Prime Minister, for instance, to intervene?
That is the last step we have not yet done. But prior to that, we have reached out at every possible level. And we have been working on this for past 6 months as far as pricing is concerned. Half a dozen letters we have sent to various ministries who are all concerned with this. They agree that yes, you have a point, but no action is being taken.
All right, Mr. Shah, unfortunately, we're completely out of time. We would have liked to continue this conversation. This is an important issue, not just as far as the pharmaceutical industry is concerned, but also for regulation in this country and the manner in which the regulator is acting. It's also an important issue for customers and consumers in this country. But appreciate you joining us with your take. As we pointed out, interim relief granted to the 5 pharmaceutical companies who've moved the Delhi High Court. We'll get you more details on this story and a lot more when we return. But for now, thanks very much for watching.